Hello, Internet. So, because Lily isn't here this week, I don't have access to her editing skills, and I have a laptop that can only just about process using Chrome 90% of the time. So, this episode really isn't going to be edited at all, to be honest. So, if the audio was bad in places, I apologise. It shouldn't be. It sounded fine on my end, but if it is, then I'm sorry. But hopefully, it's fine. Anyway, please enjoy this episode about Succession.
Stop.
Go on then.
Well, hello there.
This is going so well. Hi, everybody.
I'm glad that transition went really smoothly. They'll never notice that Lily's been replaced by someone else.
No. Yeah, speaking of, hi, everybody. Lily's not here this week because she's working her face off like a crazy person, or her hands, I guess, because she's drawing a bunch. We're getting ready for Comic-Con in a couple of weeks, and so she's not got the time to talk about stuff with me. But it means that I'm taking over and I'm talking about stuff that she hasn't seen.
Going to move random shit in the background out of frame quickly, and I've already sworn, which has fucked up the graphics, and you'll want to restart.
No, it's fine. You know what?
Huge.
Fuck it. Who gives a shit at this point? I'll do my bit, which is the actual intro to the show. I'll say, hi everybody, welcome to All the Films We Judged Before. I'm Katie. That's not Lily Kay, that's my friend Cass.
Hi.
This is Cass. Yes, as I said, Lily's not here this week, so I decided that this would be a great time to talk about a show that she's never seen, but I made Cass watch last year. Which is this show that I've got in the background currently called Succession.
A show which I think I ended up watching all of in the space of about 4 days.
Well, it's not that long, to be fair.
It's not long, but for me, that was a lot. And that's 20 episodes in 4 days.
And they are an hour long.
There's a lot to unpack in those episodes.
Unpacking these episodes. I was about to burp, and then I think it's just going to happen again in a second. I'm just going to keep talking until it decides to come out. Yes, I've mentioned this show. Oh my gosh, this camera, my life. I went out of focus. Doesn't matter. I've mentioned the show a couple of times, and I have a feeling it's going to take a while for Lily to get around to watching it because she's got a bunch of other stuff that she wants to watch first. I understand. I'm not the police. I'm really not very good at this without Lily. She usually carries it. Anyway, this is a really good show, which, before we get into it properly, you should watch it, because we are going to talk about both seasons, because season 3 starts on Sunday in a week, on the
17th.
Is it the 17th? Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right. The 17th. Or is it? It is. Now I'm wondering if it's on Sunday or if it's on Monday, because I have a feeling it might be the 18th. Oh no. Now I have to look this up, because I have to be correct on these things.
It's October the 17th.
Okay, I was right the first time.
First airs. It is this coming Sunday, if you're watching this soon.
It will be out. This episode from us will be out tomorrow.
Cool.
So it will be the coming
this
Sunday.
coming Sunday.
This coming Sunday. You'll definitely want to. You won't be able to just jump into.
No. What We've said already, it's not a super long series. The episodes are an hour long, but each season is only 10 episodes. It's not a super long show, and there's a lot. And even through season 2, you have the you have a callback to the pilot with
there's a lot of
Volta. If you're this far into the episode, you know there's going to be spoilers.
Here's what I was going to say. We're going to go into spoilers. I think we should try and keep it light on the spoilers to start off with, and then get into the heavy stuff at the end, as we keep going, so we can kind of get into it properly. If you don't know what Succession is about, it's about these fuckers in my background here. Specifically, this guy, there's Brian Cox. He plays a man called Logan Roy, who is the head of I think it's meant to be like the 5th largest media conglomerate in this sort of the universe of Succession, called Waystar Royco. He's meant to be a bit like, he's a Richard Murdoch type. They're very rich, and they own the news, and are a bit morally questionable.
That you're going to caveat that with a bit.
Yeah. I'm underselling it. They're very morally questionable.
Yeah. Some of them more so than others. Some are just gullible fools.
I think that's kind of why I went for a bit, because Logan Roy is definitely, Logan Roy is just not a good person.
Logan Roy is objectively one of the worst human beings on the fictional planet.
And yes, so the show is funny because it's called Succession. The idea baked into the pilot is that they're all of his kids. I can introduce them properly here. So we've got Kendall here, Roman. Let's see if I can actually move out of the way properly. There's Shiv, and I don't know if I think that's actually Tom. I think
that looks like Tom's head.
I think Alan Ruck is Connor.
Connor's not important.
Behind my chair.
Connor in this and in the show is unimportant and not worth looking at.
But so brilliantly played by Alan Ruck. I don't want to
fantastically acted. I dislike Logan Roy as a person. Connor just makes me angry, viscerally annoyed, constantly in every action that he takes. Just pisses me off. He is the epitome of a rich arse.
Yeah, he's the guy who he's not particularly bright, and yet he has a lot of very sort of he's the guy on the internet who'll yell at you about his right-wing politics and then refuse to actually debate you in a proper he's like, debate me, coward, and then he will just completely ignore anything that you're actually saying to him.
He's if he were real, I would love following his Twitter account because that would provide some peak comedy. He's a trust fund baby. He's a complete moron who has disposable income, has not worked a day in his life for it, and isn't interested in doing so.
Which sets him apart from the other kids because they all do work and have some kind of ambition. That's the verb I was waiting for. And so the show sets up that supposedly at Logan Roy's 80th birthday, he's going to be announcing his successor in the company. And Kendall here thinks it's going to be him because he's kind of been... he's kind of been groomed for it. I guess it is the kind of...
He's the heir apparent. While Connor's the oldest, Kendall's got more than a monkey clapping cymbals between his ears. So that's all that Connor has. Every now and again there's a faint squeak and it does a backflip, and that's when he has an idea like, I will hyper-decant wine by putting it in a blender.
Wait, does that thing he actually did? I can't actually remember.
Yep, he actually does that, and he's like, you don't hyper-decant, it adds 5 years to the wine just by blending it, and I wanted to throw something at my television.
I was like, that sounds like something he'd do, but I don't remember it specifically. It's been a year, and it's been like literally a year since I watched it because it came up on my time hop recently. What happened was I watched the first 3 episodes, and I was having trouble getting into it because I put it on and it wasn't grabbing me properly. I was like, this is interesting enough. But I wasn't particularly into it as much as I'd like to be. And then, because within the first episode, and this is where I'm going to start getting into small spoilery things for the people at home watching, Logan has a stroke?
Hemorrhagic stroke.
Yeah, I was trying to remember exactly. He has a stroke, and he's not really in the show particularly for those first 3 episodes. He's in the first episode because he's wandering around being Logan, which is to say he's bullying his children because he doesn't think they're good enough. And then he has the stroke, and then he's just sort of he's technically in the next 2 episodes when you find out that he's actually going to be okay, and he starts like slowly getting better. And then by episode 4, which is I think it's episode 4 anyway, he kind of comes back into being a force, like an antagonistic force within the series, and the whole thing suddenly becomes way more interesting.
Mm. I actually really like that though, because for the first 3 episodes, he's basically an idea.
Mm.
You don't see anything of him. All you hear is basically rumors and people muttering it. So it's the equivalent of a, a story told around a fireplace. Is that he's this force? He's this charismatic, powerful, terrifying man who wields all this power. And you just, the only thing that you have seen him do is play softball and have a stroke.
Mm.
And that
And
is
completely undermine his like heir apparent by
and
just telling him he's not going to be.
Yeah, destroy the confidence of his son. And that's all you've seen him do.
Who doesn't really have that much confidence in the first place is the big thing about Kendall, is that you kind of see him and he's trying so hard to be like hard, basically. Like his introduction is him with headphones on rapping to something in the back of one of the town cars, and you're just sort of like, oh god.
Kendall thinks he can throw down, but is absolutely 10 play. He's just this.
He's trying too hard.
He is trying far too hard. And then the first time you see Logan properly is him taking over Kendall's speech, which he is meant to be giving, announcing his own retirement and saying, no,
I'm staying for another 5 years.
I'm not retiring. I'm going to stay. You can all figure it out when I bloody well die.
Yeah. And then at the same time he goes, this is my new wife that you guys don't really like very much. I'm going to put her into the family trust with as much say in the company as my children. Enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And then they all kind of
go, I beg your fucking pardon?
At which point he then has a stroke, and the next episode is basically all of his children being like, he's not... Do we think he's actually... Is he well? Like, was he just insane before this happened? Or it's like, it's this a lot of this sort of like, is he actually as mentally up to snuff as he could be? Like, does he actually need to be taken out of that position before he runs the company into the ground? Or...
And that's a consistent thing. But like even through the second series, to a lesser degree, with some strange decisions that he makes business-wise, but especially in the first series, his behavior is, I mean, very deliberately shown to be erratic and strange. And
I think his introduction in the first episode is him getting up to piss and then pissing in the corner of his room.
Yeah, that is very first.
That's the first time you see him on screen, which is like, this is meant to be the most terrifying man in the series, and we're seeing him in an incredibly vulnerable state. So it's like, on the one hand, it's the fact that, you know, Brian Cox is so good in the show that he manages to hold this sort of terrifying, like, you know, hold over everybody, and I guess the audience on top of that. But at the same time, because we are, you know, third-party viewers, we get to see him in his more vulnerable states as well. So I think it's God, this show's really well put together, because the characters, all of his kids are like questioning his mental stability, and we're sitting here knowing that actually there's definitely stuff going on.
Yeah, he is doing his absolute best to insist that he's not an old man. And we, the audience, you get to see his doctor visiting him, and his doctor saying, "Right, I'm only meant to give you 4 of these steroid shots a year, and you've had 3 in the past 2 months." And he's like, "Give me another one, I'll be fine." Like, sir, you are 80.
But no, he's too much of an egomaniac to want to step down, and also he doesn't think any of his kids are good enough for his position yet. So of course he's not going to step aside. Which,
in series 1, he's right.
Yeah,
I would entirely agree with. The exception may be being Kendall, who could do a bad job but wouldn't run the company into the ground per season 1.
No, I would. Yeah, it
wouldn't be all that.
It's very interesting. I'll just talk about the other 2 kids because I mentioned the problem. Yeah, so Shiv here, kind of in the opposite vein to Connor. hiding behind my chair.
Connor, who will never be seen in this episode.
Because he's very much she runs the political campaigns for left-wing candidates in the political sphere, and seems to be a more sort of progressive member. But she's still the daughter of Logan Roy, and wants to be successful and is full of ambition, and just happens to is going to marry Tom Wamsgans.
Tom deserves better.
Tom does deserve better, but Tom also needs to stop trying so hard.
Tom is a lovely boy who deserves better and has absolutely put himself in he's dug his own grave, and now he will stand in it. Yeah.
He's clearly trying. It's very interesting, actually, considering that Kendall and Tom are almost trying to do the same thing. But Kendall seems small because of it. Tom just seems daft. It's like, oh, come on. We know you're a nice guy, really. You just stop trying to be so mean to everybody.
Kendall's reaching for something that he sees as his birthright, like something that he's entitled to, something he should really get. Tom seems like he walked into the wrong boardroom, sat down, and was too afraid to say, "Oh, I'm actually meant to be next door." So they all assumed that he was meant to be there, and then gave him authority based off it. He is not a commanding figure. He is one of the, I don't want to say weakest.
I can't think of him as being weak anymore.
But he's definitely one of the softer, more well-meaning.
Yeah, here's the big thing about Tom Wamsgans is, despite the fact that Shiv treats him like shit, he clearly loves his wife
incredibly dearly as well, and that leads to one of the saddest moments in the show that just made me feel awful at the very end of season 2, which we'll get to.
Yeah. Oh man. Yes, and then there's Roman. Roman's like the immature, funny child, I guess you could say. But what I think Roman may actually be one of the smartest.
I think
all of them,
apart from maybe Shiv.
Yeah.
Roman is.
But even then, I think Shiv lets her ambition get in the way of her a lot. I think Roman genuinely has like some of the best business sense out of all of them. Oh yeah.
He makes a couple of calls in season 2 as well. He sees what's going on with a couple of companies, and he always, like Kendall, tries to take the initiative, but he does this in a much more subtle way. Kendall will go and try and just bust through and go, yeah, I should do this. I'm the best. Look at how great and wonderful everything is. Look at how strong I am as a person. Please, I just want my dad to love me. And Roman will sit in the background and go, I'm going to send one person to propose something gently in the background and see how it goes. I'm going to lay foundation. I'm going to be smart about this.
Yeah. Here's the thing about Roman, because before we started, I was reading through AV Club do these episode by episode reviews, which I like to go back and read because sometimes they pick up on things that I don't understand at the moment as I'm watching the episodes. And it pointed out that within the very first episode, he writes a check for $1 million to like one of the workers on the place where they were holding their softball game, and says, if you can hit a home run, I'll give this to you. And then when he doesn't make it, he rips up the check in front of him. And it's like, I forgot that Roman could be that much of a dick. Because I think he's genuinely one of the more likable people.
Yeah, he's the character I have a really hard time getting a bead on whether or not I like Roman.
I think in the very first couple episodes, you were like, fuck this guy. And I was like, I don't know, wait.
Yeah, I started by just detesting him. And I remember sending messages being like, this guy's I hate this guy, he's awful.
And me sending smiley faces like, really?
Yeah, just grinning maniacally, waiting for me to see more. And even after watching all of it, the others, for all their character flaws, I can mostly see the rationale behind. I can see Kendall and Shiv's ambition. I can see Connor's complete lack of a brain cell. I can see Tom trying to be this hard ass when he's really not, and he's just a nice bloke.
He's just a good boy.
Roman, I cannot fathom whether is he deep down a good person? Does he have the right things in his heart? Is he just entirely for himself? And then you'll have scenes where he's with Kendall and Shiv in a boat, smoking and just being. He's like a giggly little schoolboy, and you're just looking, want to tussle his hair like a Victorian street urchin.
Yeah.
I cannot. He's one of the best acted characters in the series, and just the most fascinating. And I love watching him because of it, because I am always looking at him thinking, God, I just don't know how Roman's going to approach this. Is he going to be a garbage human being but get things done really efficiently? Or is he going to remember that he's a human?
And before I think we can move on to plot stuff, and hopefully that we've sold the show to you at this point, and you should go and watch it before we get into some of the plot stuff. We obviously have to talk about truly the actual greatest character in this entire show, Greg Kirsch, who's
Cousin Greg,
who is his grandfather is Logan's brother. That's how he's related to the family, and he kind of gets pushed into like making an introduction because he goes off to like he gets like a job in one of their like theme parks in the first episode, and then throws up in the mascot suit.
Yeah, he gets a job as a mascot, starts his shift by getting horrifically stoned in his car, and then stumbles about stonedly, vomits through the costume, and is summarily fired. Because, don't do that. Especially don't do that on your first day in the job.
Oh, Greg.
So, calling his mother, he ends up speaking to his uncle because he's family. They'll do what's right for him. And he almost accidentally stumbles into a position where he's not part of the main family, but he's on the outskirts. He's looking in, and he's got his foot in the door. And
it's just so awkward.
Yeah, he is. I think apart from Roman, he is the best acted character in the show. I adore Cousin Greg.
I love
he is.
Greg. Like, you can't. I don't think there's a way for you to not. Everybody else has like malicious like intent in a lot of like ways. Like somewhere along the line they will have picked up some form of malicious intent. Greg's just there.
Greg is the only one in that house who is still willing to look at his moral compass and actually try and follow it. And in so many scenes, he's there just.
I don't know. I'm against racism. Bullshit, Greg. We're all against racism.
One of the greatest quotes in the series. He is completely ill-fitting for the sort of environment in which he's found himself, and yet he's, despite being bumbling and innocent, very, very good, very, very smart, and seems to just almost use his apparent naivety almost entirely to his favor by, I couldn't possibly have done this. I'm just Cousin Greg. I couldn't have possibly hidden documents.
The thing that says top secret and then it says receipts.
I love him so much.
But like, I wrote receipts on the envelope, but they are not in fact receipts.
Receipts.
Look,
I can't think of an analogy for Cousin Greg because he is just Greg in the most wonderful, fantastic way. He's what I think Tom was before Tom became Tom.
Probably. Tom in like school, probably.
Yeah, definitely.
Thing is,
Tom 10 years ago.
What everybody who might be interested in the show needs to understand is that while in the first season, Tom is getting ready to marry Shiv, and then the end of the season is their wedding and all this sort of stuff, and they are fully married by the second season and all this sort of stuff. The real love affair in the show is between Tom and Greg, because Greg's position becomes executive assistant to Tom. And this relationship is not healthy in any way, shape, or form, and yet it is the best relationship in the entire show.
He's just Tom's toady, but Greg is in a position that he's too good for, and Tom finally has found someone who can be a rung below him.
And boy, does
finally finding, yeah, and he's like, someone I can step on, and does so frequently and awfully, because he's so desperately trying to be this big corporate monster, this big figure. And Greg lets him, because Greg figures out how to make it work.
Although, to be fair, that makes Greg sound more calculating than he is.
Yes. He's not doing this because he's some form of genius. He Mr. Magoo's his way into a lot of situations. He sees a nickel on the ground, so he bends over to pick it up when someone swings a bat over his head. He's not
right.
He's a smart dumbass.
He is.
And very dearly lovable.
So what I'm gonna my thinking is, we should go into spoiler territory now. I want to ask you what some of your favorite moments from season 1. So I find season 1 quite hard to remember because it was a while ago at this point. But I'm curious if you have any that stand out.
There's one which very much stands out.
Go on.
Right at the end of season 1.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, that's one of the huge bits, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, if you want something smaller than that,
let's find something smaller, and then we can talk about some of the bigger moments.
Tell you what I really like. It's when Logan is just waking up. From
after the stroke.
From after the stroke, and
is this when Kendall goes in to see him?
Yeah. And the plot of the first 2 episodes is, I think one of them's even called it's a shit show at the fuck factory.
That's the second episode, shit show at the fuck factory, which is one of the reasons why I knew I was going to get on with the show. It just took me a minute to.
And the whole thing is, whilst Logan has been in a stroke, Kendall has to take over, and does take over in the interim. And in doing so is told that his father is massively in debt. And if the company, and he's borrowed against the value of the stock, so if the company's stock falls below, the debtors can default on it and collect. So the first 2 episodes is Kendall suddenly finding out that the company is
desperately trying to fix his father's mistakes.
He finds out that the company is massively in trouble, and just working furiously to try and piece together everything so that everything doesn't fall apart in the next 2 days, and by the skin of his teeth managing. Just barely managing. And he goes in, talks to Logan and says, the stock it's fallen, it went below whatever the threshold was, 140 or something. It's fallen below, but I managed to get investment to inject capital so they won't default on the debt. And Logan is disappointed in him. Yeah, he looks at him and he goes,
"Fucking idiot."
You fucking idiot. And it's that's the first instance we see of Logan really being a powerhouse. His first action is to condemn his son for saving his company because he thinks he could have done it better.
Yeah. It's like, the way you did it was not good enough for me in this moment. Because he somehow in this moment sees that, like, because at the same time he does, I think the narrative then kind of shows how Kendall did kind of fuck this up by giving another company more power than they should have in his company in the first place. Because the whole thing is that Logan doesn't want to give the power that he has over in his in his company over away to anybody else. That isn't part of like his, even then, to be honest.
He wants it in the family and as close on as few family members as possible.
Yeah, and so I think it shows that Logan has a sense of like he's very good at business. Logan, you find out as the series goes on, built this company from the ground up, and not in like the small loan of $1 million way.
Literally from the ground up. He started the company, which started, I think it was newspapers or something, and it in the story, he starts a newspaper in Scotland, a small like local rag, and from there he acquires a second and grows and grows and grows properly from the ground up, and an actual businessman.
So he just like in many ways knows what he's doing, and clearly sees the moment where Kendall's like, I did this and this, and we've managed to save, we're good for now. And he's like, well, you fucking idiot, because you've just opened us up to like attacks from other places. And it does. It absolutely does.
Yeah, the fact that he sees all of that in all of 10 seconds after having a stroke and is still so acutely aware immediately of what's going on, I think it's the best demonstration of his character.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I was trying to think of some other stuff that happened in season 1, and the thing that comes to mind that I kind of forgot about for a bit, and I can't remember what episode it happens in, but it's at one of the... I'm pretty sure this was in season 1. I genuinely don't remember, but it was the rocket exploding.
Ooh, is that season? Yes.
Because Roman gets put in charge of this space launch. He's like, it's going really well.
In fact, I think that might be the very end of season 1. I think that might even be the last episode.
I think it does it. I'm trying to think.
Yes, it must be, because it's Kendall. We're in spoilers anyway. Kendall has tried to hold a vote of no confidence against his father.
Yeah.
Things go wrong,
Nah.
and it fails, and Kendall is fired from the company. So Logan.
Oh right, and that's the thing that causes Kendall to fall off the wagon.
Yeah, and
which is very important to the thing that happens at the end of season 1.
Oh yeah. And because Roman, who was going to vote with Kendall, ends up not voting with Kendall and instead stays with his father, he gets, I guess, the reward, the medal of being put in charge of this satellite launch in Japan.
Can't remember how to spell satellite.
Which explodes on the launch pad. And the whole episode, it's that very tense episode.
It happens at the wedding. That's right.
Yeah. And he's like, how responsible are we? And did anyone die? And if they died, how responsible are we for that?
It exploded, Roman. It exploded. But it's the fact that in this moment, because like this wedding is pretty intense for a lot of reasons. Shiv and Tom get married, and then Shiv, just after the wedding, announces that she doesn't want to have a monogamous relationship. She wants it to be an open marriage. And Tom, being the male wife that he is, says, yes, this is fine with me. It was not fine.
Tom is not happy about this arrangement. She doesn't just say, I don't think I want to have an open marriage. She says, I've had an affair. Also, I would like an open marriage.
And he's just fine. He's just like, okay. Because, oh man.
I mean, Tom's not entirely innocent in that respect either.
No.
But
anyway,
poor Tom.
That happens, and at the same time, Kendall is trying to... I'm trying to remember exactly. He's trying to do something. He's trying to do another like backroom business deal.
It's
with the guy from the startup. I think.
Yeah.
Or the investment company.
Stewie.
Because he's trying to do a forceful takeover of the company, which doesn't go well for him.
He after the vote of no confidence doesn't go through for a whole mess of reasons.
Including Logan deciding not to get out of the room when they vote on.
Simply remaining in the
He was
room
like,
and
no, I'm
berating
not leaving.
people.
Which when everybody's like, well, fuck. But also, Kendall couldn't, like, literally...
Couldn't be there. He was indisposed.
The whole thing of him being like, but we can get, he's like, take me up in the helicopter. He's like, we can't fly right now. It's like, okay, but like, what if I gave you some more money? He's like, no, you don't understand. We can't fly right now.
It was, and that was the reason that Logan could even get back. And it was sort of almost a farcical style perfect storm where there was a terror lockdown. So Logan can't have his meeting with the president, and so goes home. And Kendall, who was meeting with someone to try and get more votes for his vote of no confidence, is now grounded because terror lockdown, no flying.
You get the traffic in New York being the traffic in New York means that he has to do his speech over the phone as he's running back to the, and it's just he can't do it properly.
And it's a great him trying to be so powerful over the phone, running through New York traffic.
It's not a terrible speech. Like, he's actually making a lot of really good points, but because he's not in the room, he can't command any presence. And it's like, oh, fuck.
It does also have one of my favorite moments when he's trying to say to the pilot, we can fly, the pilot just very bluntly looks at him and says, no. If we fly, we will get shot out of the air by an F-35 and we will die.
We are not flying.
You don't seem to understand. This isn't a case of they're not flying, but we can. We will be strafed and attacked by fighter pilots.
Oh, man. So yeah, Kendall decides to make a takeover bid. Which Logan just knows about because he's Logan. I can't remember how he finds out about it, but he does because I'm looking at the plot on Wikipedia and it mentions
does
that
Roman tell him about it?
Oh, maybe. Well, it says
like
Logan gathers
Roman
his children into the room to inform them of Kendall's takeover bid, infuriating all of them.
Oh, that's right. Because Kendall is going to do the takeover, and then they move it. Stewie and whoever the other person is, I can't remember her name. They move the takeover forwards to be on the same day as Shiv's wedding because Logan would be out of the country, so they could get it done easier because he wouldn't be present.
That's true.
He wouldn't have as much time to prepare. And that's why they find out at the wedding and everything hits the fan.
And they all, but it's the fact that in the juxtaposition of these two things of Kendall's takeover bid not going as well, to Roman finding out that nobody died in the rocket explosion, like completely inexplicably. The rocket exploded, but everybody's fine. And he's like, amazing, it's great.
Fantastic. I'm off the hook.
He just goes, meh, it's fine. Off we go.
Is everything that could have gone wrong for him has just gone right. Yeah. Who knows how everyone survived that rocket explosion? Roman largely doesn't care.
No, he doesn't. This is one of the ways in which Roman isn't a particularly good person. But it's like, it's also in this episode. I like these episodes particularly because you get to see them being kind of sibling-ish. Because they also go out on the boat. I think it's in this episode, or it's in this episode, or it's in the last episode.
It's 9 or 10, yeah.
Where they go out on the boat and they have a little smoke and they just sort of are like, hey, to Shiv and all this sorts of stuff. And it's actually quite, it's like, oh, these people do actually care about each other if they are kind of like
it's
bashing each other. And
it's one of the very small moments in the show where not only do they all appear human, they all appear human together. Like a lot of times when one of them is actually vulnerable or just needs to be a human for a second, one of them will take the chance to dive on it because their guard's down, now we can get stuff done. This is a very rare time where they're actually all like, yay, our sister's getting married, happy.
It's very good. I think this fucking last episode, both of the season finales have been incredible so far. But this one in particular then goes on to have Kendall spend, after his failed takeover attempt, just continuously looking for drugs. And then runs into a waiter that Logan had fired. The two of them do ket together. And then
they go on a quest for Kendall, being the discerning fellow that he is, informs the young waiter that he was in fact looking for cocaine.
Yeah.
Not
so they
ketamine.
they go in the car. Naturally, a smart move to drive. I'm trying to remember who was driving.
I think Kendall was driving.
No, I don't think he was, because I think that was the thing. I think the waiter was driving, because then the deer comes in and he drives off the bridge.
Kendall grabs the wheel and swerves.
But then they go into the river. The waiter dies, and it's almost like one of those things where it's like you could, obviously, technically speaking, it's Kendall's fault, but also he wasn't. I think the way that they decided to set the whole thing up was really fascinating, because it would have been really easy just to have Kendall be driving the car and then have him crash off the bridge. But he wasn't the one driving, and the guy who was driving, he was like, "Hey man, we should." I think he's actually trying to be like, "This isn't going particularly well. Do you want me to drive? Because you're not with it properly right now." At which point, the deer runs in front of the car, and he tries to swerve for him, which just happens to mean that they end up falling into this river, and he dies. Not Kendall.
And Kendall does try and get him out.
He does.
There's a point where Kendall tries to lean over and tries to open up the door and drag him out, and can't. It's not like Kendall just instantly saves himself. He tries to get him out, fails, goes to the river, and is visibly considering going back in. Before being, I can't do this. He's guilty, but he's not completely culpable.
Right. I think that's the better way to put it. It's like, yes, he's guilty, but he's not like he did like all of the morally reprehensible things that he could have done in that moment.
Yeah, it's as much the fault of the waiter, who also decides that driving whilst on ket is a fantastic idea.
He was the one with the ketamine.
It's not Kendall's ket. He has ketamine, does a load, and then decides, let's go on a quest for cocaine. Driving along small back English country roads which have no street lighting at night at high speed.
Scotland, actually.
Yeah, you're right. It's a Scottish castle.
Because I know they actively go to Scotland in the second season, because Scotland is where Logan is from. He grew up in Scotland.
He's from Dundee.
But it's the whole sequence where he sneaks back into the castle after, and he's covered in mud, and he finds his way into a bathroom, and he realizes that he dropped his he lost his key card in the river, and you're like, oh shit. But he somehow managed to get back in, clean himself up, and then head back to the wedding, and seem fine, and like dances with his family and everything. And so you're kind of like, did he get away with it? And then the next day, because that's the thing, because they don't do the takeover thing. They're about to do it, and then Logan sits him down and goes, "Hi. So I know what happened. It's okay. I'm going to sort this out. But you have to
call off the bear hug.
Call off the bear hug."
The way he does it is just so, because he brings him in and says, one of the waiters died last night, and the police going through his car found this, and it's Kendall's key card. It doesn't have to mean anything. It doesn't have to be anything. Your dad can protect you from this.
And then he gives him a bear hug, which is the best part of the whole fucking episode. It's like,
I think one of my favorite parts about Logan as a character is he wields his fatherly approval like a sword.
He does.
He doesn't. He's an awful father. God, he is the worst father in the world.
That's the really interesting thing about, because if you watch any interview with Brian Cox talking about Logan, and like he asked the question very early on when they were making the series, like, does Logan actually love his children? And they said yes, Logan does love his children, but like he said, he uses that as a weapon.
Yeah, the only time Kendall breaks down crying in that scene, and he gives, as you say, gives him a hug, and it is a genuine moment where you're like, oh, that's just a man hugging his boy, and it's very sweet. But
He
he's
manipulated him into that position.
Yeah, the only time he shows fatherly approval at all is
to Kendall specifically,
mm,
is when he's weak.
yeah.
He only likes Kendall when he's pliable to him.
And I mean, and you sort of see him do it, use it differently with each of his kids. When Shiv wants to become CEO, CEO, he offers her that position because it suits him to get her on side, because she was working for, I can't remember the politician's name.
The guy who's basically Bernie Sanders in the show.
Yes, he's working for not Bernie Sanders. No, she's working for not Bernie Sanders, excuse me, who wants to publish an expose on the cruise scandal, which becomes a thing, is a thing in season 1. And how they do that is fantastic, where it's this thing that's touched on in season 1, then is season 2. And he uses, again, he says, hi, beloved daughter who I've always loved so dearly, I can make you CEO. But you're going to have to work for me and not the guy who's threatening to undermine me massively. And for Roman, Roman, he needs him to vote with him instead of Kendall on the vote of no confidence. Roman, don't vote against me. And Roman gets the satellite launch. It's this carrot on a stick, but instead of just getting the carrot, if you don't get it, he will beat you with that stick very hard. He's such a good character.
The interesting thing about, because we'll get into the cruise stuff in a minute, because then we'll be moving straight on to season 2.
Yeah.
The cruise stuff in season 1 gets brought up because Tom gets put in charge of cruises. And as he gets put in charge of cruises, the guy who's retiring goes, so hey, here's our air-gapped laptop with all of the incriminating stuff we've done in this. It's full of stuff. It's bad. If you're taking over, you might want to do something about it. And this is the first time we see Tom actually struggle with a moral quandary, because it's like, it's really bad. It's a lot of like people who have died on cruises and they've covered it up, sort of thing, and there are sexual
occult unnatural reasons as well.
There are sexual assaults perpetrated by that's
Lester, who is known as Mo. Mo? Where does he get that nickname from? That doesn't fit in with Lester. Oh no.
And you like, the moment he finds out about it, he's like, we should do something. We should come clean about this whole thing. And then very quickly he gets kind of pushed into, just sort it out and it'll be fine. And so he covers it up. And he gets Greg to do it, because he's like, if we get Greg to do it, we can throw him under the bus later on if it comes out again. But Greg, being actually surprisingly smart and also has more of a moral compass than everybody else, makes copies of all the stuff that he's getting rid of for later, which becomes very important by the end of season 2. Oh man, this show's so well put together.
And that's also the first time Greg's seen properly working for himself, because he makes the copies and he also tells Jerry, who's, that's right, I can't remember Jerry's title. She's legal counsel.
She's basically I'm the smart person who's going to stop you all from going to jail.
Yeah, and she's
and
very good at it.
Just the best.
And Tom confides in Greg because he has to tell someone about the awful stuff that he's just found out about the cruises.
Sorry, okay? Tess just knocked on the door and it made me jump. I'm not getting out of this chair, Tess. I can't. It's not happening. She's just going to keep knocking. It's fine. We'll keep going.
Excellent dog. What was I saying? That's Tom has to tell someone because it's destroying him that he's not told anyone. So he confides in Greg about the awful stuff, and Greg's immediately responds with, "Why are you telling me? I don't want to know this. Now I'm culpable as well." Which great scene, and Greg then secretly goes to Jerry and tells her, which leads to Jerry coming up to Tom during the wedding and saying, "Don't you bloody dare come out about this. We can't just cover it up. Make sure we don't get in trouble for it."
The other thing about that episode as well is that Greg heard about Shiv with so he kind of was witness to a point where Shiv was like actively cheating on before he tries to go and tell Tom, and Tom just yells at him like, "No!" Because Greg is just absolutely anytime anything goes wrong with Tom's relationship with Shiv, he takes it out on Greg. Because he's too afraid of Shiv to take it out on Shiv. Which is specifically brought up during the next season when they have like a lockdown. Because Greg's like, "I want to not be your assistant anymore," and at which point Tom starts pelting him with water bottles and saying, "You can't leave me." So, I think you may be projecting.
I wish I could remember the line that goes with it as well, because there's a line that he screams at Greg in almost incomprehensible menagerie of words, and it is just him shouting about Shiv, and Greg in with an admirable level of patience and even more admirable reflexes, just taking the bottles that were being held at him, being like,
I think what he says is, "Stop pelting me."
Yes, stop pelting me.
I'm just seeing if the AV article has it.
I wish I could remember what it was.
Are you attempting to break up with me, Greg? This is not a good feeling, Greg, that you're making me have here.
Poor Greg.
But it's the fact that because this is the same episode that, because Greg wants something and he's trying to figure out how to kind of navigate, I guess, this whole thing, like the whole business side of and like how to actually use kind of people to get what he wants. So because he has. Yes. This is when he reveals he still has the documents that he got told to destroy. And he goes, so Greg attempts to blackmail him?
Greg, are you asking permission to blackmail me? Yes, you absolutely can blackmail me. Greg, I've never been prouder.
So Greg, I accept.
That is...
At which point, that's when Tom promotes him.
Yeah.
That's the best part.
And it's something that we haven't really mentioned. This show's funny.
It's really funny.
It's really funny.
It's so funny.
A lot of the stuff is, obviously there's some of it's heavy subject matter, but God, it's just, throughout the whole thing, there are some parts which are just genuinely hilarious. A lot of them involving... I was going to say, a lot of them involving Greg and Tom, and the greatest fear of all, which is the attack child.
It's small enough for like an attack child or something. Oh, I wish I could remember the specific way that he says it, because
it reminds me of... It just reminds me of Metal Gear Solid 5 and guest starring child soldiers. It has the same energy.
Kojima, why?
Yeah. Kojima's a golden god, and I won't hear a bad word said against it.
Oh, God. Yeah. Anyway, we go back to the beginning. I'm trying to remember, because the interesting thing about season 2, and I think the thing that it does the most successfully, is that it really drives home the point that Kendall is a broken man for the entire thing. He is simmering. He's small. He just does what his father tells him to do. I think the best. It's something, and I love a bit of like interesting blocking. But specifically during Bore on the Floor, which is just the most like awful, I think, episode.
Yeah, that
that's
episode
Logan
made
being
me feel
full
genuinely
bully.
unhappy.
That is Logan being full bully in a way that is just sort of like, oh god, why do any of you people stay here? That kind of way. But there's a point where Logan's making a point, and he uses Kendall to back up his point by going over to him and just putting his hands on his shoulders and just sort of standing there, and then Kendall starts puppeting all of his father's lines, basically. And it's just so good. But it means that because you are watching this like very he's so full of rage in places as well. Like, and I think that really it telegraphs the end of the season perfectly, because you don't see it coming, and then when it happens, it's like, oh, this didn't come out of nowhere. He's been simmering with this for a while. And I think of that specifically when it's almost like a test run when he goes back to the guy he like in the pilot episode, he's trying to make a deal with this. I'm so sorry. He's trying to make a deal with this like media company, basically, because he thinks that that like kind of social media and all the tech stuff is the future of whereas Logan's very focused on news. I think they end up going into business together after a while, but the guy who he talks to really doesn't think anything of him. And he uses that in the next season. He buys out the company. They merge into each other, and then he immediately guts the company for everything it's worth, gets everybody, like, just completely destroys it from the inside out. He says, I can't remember exactly what the line is, but it's the first time that Kendall actually does seem terrifying. Because it's like, a lot of the times when Kendall's trying to be sort of intense, he sounds it's like he's saying words that don't fit properly in his mouth.
It's like when a red panda tries to make itself intimidating by putting its arms in the air and going, yeah, and you look at it and you're still a red panda. It doesn't look intimidating. It looks like I can pick you up and give you a hug.
I really wish I could remember, because it's like,
I'm trying to think of.
He says something about chicken coop, I feel like.
I'm
This
just gonna quickly Google chicken coop succession.
It's like, sorry, I just found one. I think my favorite thing about, and I recommend if you have a show that has like kind of a cultural status, EV Club do these, like I said, these episode by episode reviews, and a lot of the time they do at the end is they do these stray observations where they couldn't get into it in the actual article, but they'll put it in like a bullet point, just like, this is a thing I noted and it was good. The last one on this episode, which I think is episode 3, 4, 2. It is the line. It's everyone's against racism, Greg.
That's because it is chicken coop, and thank you some random person on Reddit for this. Kendall is doing this on his father's orders.
Yeah, but the way he does it feels like he's finally figured out how to actually navigate with some kind of. I think it's the first time he feels like he has some kind of confidence.
He goes in and he's been told to gut this company, and incidentally, Logan is convinced of that by. So I want to say Kieran, but that's the actor's name, Roman. He's convinced of this by Roman, who says the workers want to unionize. How dare they?
That's the thing. That's right, because it's like the workers want to unionize, and they're trying. And it seems like the guy who runs the company isn't against that.
He's definitely for it. So Logan says, "Shut it down." Kendall doesn't really want to, but because I remember it being a plot point, he goes in the night before, and he installs a load of Wi-Fi blockers, so they can't send anything out immediately. They can't send anything from their work computers out to show what's going on. And he walks in, fires them. The CEO of Volta is very angry, and then the quote is, excuse my language, but go find another chicken coop, you cunt.
But it's the first time that you feel like he's doing it in a very pointed and like vicious way, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, he proper.
Kendall might actually have some teeth.
Yeah, he's not just doing this for his dad. He is, at that point, he is done with being a lackey. He's got a job to do. He's gonna do it, but he's doing it because it can get him somewhere.
But like at the same time, you've got, because this is very early on. It has I think that is technically the turning point, but you still see Kendall be very beaten down and like broken. Like there's the scene, I can't remember exactly when it takes place, but Kendall goes to Shiv and is just sort of like fully aware that he's like, it's not going to be me. So when you take over the company, because he's like, it's going to be, everybody I think at that point is kind of convinced that Shiv is going to be the one to do this. He's like, when it's you, just please take care of me, because I don't think, like I can't do this really whole thing. And I think I think that moment is the first time he has a sense of teeth about him, and then as it goes on, at some point he decides, I think the real Kingpin moment for him, because I think he's starting to gain more confidence in like the business side of things. It's the bit right at the end of the season when Kendall's offered up as the sacrifice to the media and to everybody, because the parks, the cruise line stuff comes out. There's a great episode set in Congress.
Greg on the witness stand is,
if it is to be said, so it is, so it be.
I need you all to imagine the most eloquent speech you can. Imagine something fantastic. Imagine Shakespeare. Imagine the to be or not to be speech. And now go to the opposite of that and have it delivered, instead of by a Shakespearean actor, having it delivered by your mate Dave from down the pub who's 4 pints in. That's the level of eloquence we're talking about.
It's Greg being so awkward and not knowing how to. It's the way that I think that whole thing would have been hilarious anyway, if it weren't for the fact that the guy the sort of Bernie Sanders character, Gil, I've just seen his name. Thank you.
That was driving me insane. Insane.
It's when Gil just turns and goes, "Are you okay?"
Even if you're not going to watch the show, please just go and look up the Succession.
Watch that scene. It's so good.
Just look up. It will be something like Succession Tribunal Senate, and it is just incredible. That one scene will give you a perfect summary of who Cousin Greg is.
Also in that episode is when we find out that the night that it looks like it's coming out, all the stuff is coming out, Tom sends, how I wish I could remember how many, hang on, I have to find, because the specific number is so important.
Thankfully, there's a single quote you can Google that is very easy.
You should be able to find it real quick.
I found so many GIFs of it.
Crunch.
No, this isn't what I'm looking for. This is a debate on the spelling. Internet, you're very strange.
I wish I could find. Basically, Tom sends a lot of emails between the hours of
67.
67 emails between like the hours of like 3 a.m. and
5 a.m.
5 a.m. At which point they're like, the subject line of which is, you can't make a Tomlet without breaking a few Gregs. fact that this is said out loud in Congress. It's so good.
Mr. Wamsgans, is it true that, can you confirm that between the hours of 3 and 5 of Wednesday, the whenever it was, you sent 67 messages entitled, "You can't make a Tomlet without breaking a few Craigs"? It is the single greatest piece of dialogue in the history of television, and I'll fight anyone who says otherwise.
I think what the really fascinating thing about this whole season is that the whole thing is like slowly and surely it's like this controversy is going to come out. It's just how do we weather it, and it gets to episode 9, and that is the moment. It's like that's when they have to actually technically face the music. That's when they are in Congress, like looking at the senators and everything.
Now, Logan has a line about it as well, where I think he says that to get this to go away, the shareholders, they'll want a blood sacrifice, I think are his words.
Yeah, because that becomes very important in the next episode. Because after that, after Tom being on the stand, he comes back in and is like, "I'm the fucking patsy. I can't believe that you're putting me up to this sort of thing." It's the way that Greg goes, "I just turned down $250 million and now I'm going to jail forever because of this fucking guy."
I love Greg very dearly.
He's so good.
That's an interest. It's separate from everything, but not so much. It's an interesting point of Greg and his own ambition. Is he was willing to he was given the ultimatum by his grandfather, who is the brother of Logan, either work for Logan, or keep working for Logan, but if you do, I'm writing you out of my $250 million inheritance. You'll be on your own. And Greg keeps working for Logan. He thinks that he can, I guess, make more.
I feel like,
or do better.
I think actually what happens is he's about to make a Grexit, which is one of the best lines of the entire show. Because he goes to Logan and is like, "I'm going to leave," and then I think all the cruise stuff starts to come out, and I think he realizes that he can't just abandon ship with the sort of thing that because he feels responsible for it. So
he's still afflicted with morals.
He's against racism.
We're all against racism, Greg.
Oh, it's so. I'm trying to think of other stuff within this season.
I mean, you can go with the biggest thing, which is the blood sacrifice.
Right? Made. Yeah, sure. Because I know, because that was what my point was. You have kind of what is the peak of the season. It feels like in episode 9 with the thing in DC, and then you have another episode after that, and you're kind of like, well, it feels like we've done the whole thing. What are we going to be doing here? And then they all go off to like fucking Italy or France or some place that's really nice and sunny.
Because I remember thinking this at the time, because it's the whole cruise scandal, they go out on their yacht in the Mediterranean.
Yeah, it's the hilarity. It's also, I think, the point in the season that you see, episode 9 is the point in the season where you see Kendall and Logan the most on the same page, it seems like.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
they're both lying very well, basically, on the stand, because of course they are. And it's like, oh, these two are like fully a team here. And it's like they get through everything in Congress, they go off on their little Mediterranean yacht, and it becomes somebody has to take the fall for everything. We actually have to put out a blood sacrifice, and they have this whole like discussion at the dinner table, where it's like, well, we should put Tom up and put some Greg sprinkles on top of it. Greg is so offended. It's like, what is a Greg sprinkle?
You have that interesting point as well, where you see this is not necessarily the first time, but certainly the most obvious time that shows Shiv does actually love Tom, because everyone pretty much is like, yeah, fuck, Tom will take it.
It takes her a minute though, because this is the important bit, because it's like, yes, Shiv does love Tom, and eventually she goes,
Eventually
we're not
is
going
willing
to... But she does it in a way it's like, no, we're not going to do this to Tom. What she does is she diverts the thing and points it at somebody else instead. And it takes her a minute to get there, which leads to that heartbreaking scene that you were talking about, where they go off to the beach and Tom finally goes, I don't like the way you're fucking treating me. I don't want to have an open marriage. I want to have more say in what we do in this relationship. And also, I think the big part is where he says something like, I can't tell if being with you is making me more sad than it would be if I was without you.
I think the sadness I have by being with you is more than the sadness I would have if I wasn't with you.
Yeah.
And it's just crushing.
It's crushing, but also you're sitting there like, thank you, Tom. You finally did it. But the best part is he then gets on the boat and eats Logan's chicken off his plate, and you're just sort of like a bit like Logan, just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. He walks up very pointedly, looks at Logan, I think shakes his hand, takes the chicken off his plate, bites it, and Logan's just...
And he's like, what the fuck? And he goes, thank you for the chicken. And then he just leaves, and there's a part of you that's a bit like, did Logan respect that in some strange way?
I think he would. Because Logan does he sort of looks down and looks up at whoever's next to him and just goes, what the fuck was that? That scene is wonderful. I've never felt a character more instantly than Logan in that moment, just going, what the fuck was that? Because as the audience, I was going, what the fuck was that? Even with the context as well.
But yeah, so it's like...
We also have the very good scene on the boat, which is... It's a precursor to the very last thing in the series, which is Kendall speaks with Logan and he says, did you ever think that I was going to be good enough to inherit the company? And Logan just looks at him and says, no, you're not... What is it? He says, you're not a killer. That's the line. You're not a killer like you need to be for this. So you were never going to be it.
Always seen him as being sorry, I'm reading at the same time as trying to form a thought, which was stupid because I wasn't forming any thoughts and I also wasn't reading anything.
I've got
cancelled the two things out.
I keep on glancing over to look at notes so I can try and sound better than I am and like I've got a better memory than I have. My notes are not very helpful to me right now.
I was saying something. I don't remember what I was saying.
My note at the very top is just Logan followed by a series of expletives.
Yeah, no, because I think... Yeah, he and then, because it's at the end of that scene that then Logan gives him what is, like, known as the Judas kiss. Oh, no, the other way around. Kendall gives Logan the Judas kiss. He comes over, he gives his father a kiss on the cheek and goes, okay, I'm going to do this for you. And then you have this great scene of him coming off the boat, going off to this press conference where he's meant to take responsibility for everything, which is a direct parallel to the very beginning of the scene where he gets pulled out of rehab to go on. It's the first time Logan decides it's the first time I think Logan or Kendall sees how his father's going to be using him from that point forward, where he gets pulled out of rehab to be like, hey, I need you to go on TV and like say these things for me. This time around, he seems much more prepared for it because he knows what's going to happen. He's been in this position for a while now, and he goes in, and you're sitting there going, okay, what's going to happen here? And at which point, Kendall pulls the biggest fucking brain move of the entire show and blames everything on Logan. And it is like, I literally, because I was watching it here, I have my DVD player, my TV set over there, where Kendall's face is, I guess.
Where you're just gently stroking Kendall.
And I was in bed. It was like, I just put the episode on after I'd woken up that morning. And I went from being fully reclined to sitting upright entirely, just like fully hand over mouth in front of my TV, like, what the fuck?
He was going to take the whole rap, and he just turns and says, no, Logan knew everything that was going on. It's entirely on him. He could have done something at any time, and he chose not to. And that it ends with my favorite part of all, which is everyone is watching this. Everyone's watching the
They're all
press
still on the
conference
boat.
on the boat. And as Kendall says this, it cuts to Logan, and Logan smiles.
It's like the subtlest of smiles, though, because I
It's
think
just
if you
this.
it really it's got it's you could arguably say that it's just his face, but you have this sense of just the way that he's watching him of like, ah, there's my son. That this is what I have wanted this entire time. But what I think is very interesting and bringing it into where we're going to be as of Sunday, I think he's very quickly going to realize the realities of somebody trying to take him over, in that he doesn't want to be taken over, and he's going to start. What's the word?
He's gonna start barking.
Well, yeah, no, it's he's resenting him for it. He's
Yeah.
gonna start being like, well, how dare he do this to me? It's not like he does not feel he'll for a moment feel proud of his son, but he will not feel humbled by the action.
Yeah. He looks and he says, he sees, my son is a killer. Excellent.
Oh God, he's
he can
killing
get
me.
this done. Yeah. Then it's oh no.
What do we do now?
And that, I mean, it's Logan, so he's not gonna roll over.
But that is the best thing, because I've been reading a lot of like not in-depth reviews, but like, you know, headlines and the occasional. I think Empire did a full review of season 3, and basically everything I've seen is it's fucking fantastic. Which, thank God, I knew it was going to be, but like it's pretty much everybody being like, it's the best show on TV has returned to us. I think one of my favorite things about this, the marketing that they've done for this season, I don't know if you've seen this, all of the posters that they put up are slightly different. So the posters are of like, there's a line down the center of a corridor, and it's always Kendall on one side and Logan on the other. But it depending on the social media website they posted it on, they had like Shiv and Roman and Tom and Greg standing on different sides of the line behind different people.
That's fantastic.
So it's like you don't know whose side anybody's on. It's either you're on Kendall's side or you're on Logan's side, and people are going to be switching back and forth a lot. You can just tell. I don't know if you've seen the clip that they released straight after for the opening for season 3, but it's very good. Of I can't remember her name. It's like Kendall's assistant. I can't. And Greg heading towards one of the town cars, and just all of these reporters, and you know, Kendall looking. He's got sunglasses on. He's looking all Kendall cool. And Greg's just behind him yelling, "No comment!"
Yes, I have seen this clip.
No comment. You don't have to say no comment. And then as he's getting into the no comment,
Greg's a magnificent goon.
so great. But it's very it's become sort of a question of what I don't know where this season's gonna end. Which is very fun.
Yeah, it's the best. It's just the best. It's going into what's going to be a fucking nightmare of a series. The others have sort of had this. They've had quite a nice pace to them, where it's been a couple of interesting episodes. No, there's never been a filler episode. The episodes have always built to something. This one is going to be off the bat, I think.
Shit.
Stuff is happening. Yeah. I mean, like I've seen the episode titles for season 3. Obviously, I've not seen any of it.
Well, I don't think I've seen the episode titles for season 3.
The very first episode is called Secession.
Nice.
Which, great. And just the story the titles tell is so good.
I love episode titles. I love it when shows do like use episode titles properly as well. Because like I like shows that use episode titles that really show like quietly what the episode is about without actually really giving anything away. But I also like there are some shows that use like episodes that have like a theme within episode titles. Like what I always really liked about The Mentalist is the fact that all the episode titles right up until the time that Red John is revealed and killed have red in the title somewhere. It usually is in color, like it actually says red, but sometimes it'll say something like scarlet instead. But it's always like red is within the title everywhere because it's all about Red John. And then after Red John goes, different colors are used in the title other than red, and it's like, fuck, that's so good. But I think episode titles are very important and don't get as much. They don't get talked about as much.
I just on that note, completely separate to Succession, whoever wrote the episode title for Scrubs, where the episode is about a heart attack, all Scrubs titles are my something, like my overkill or my mistake. Whoever wrote the title for an episode about a heart attack called Myocardial Infarction is the single funniest person on the planet, and I have never been more proud of a human being.
That's very good. I'm trying to think.
And just to bring it back to Succession, no title for episode 10 yet.
When are you looking at these episode titles? Because now I want to see them.
I just have them noted down. I can't remember where I got them.
Season 3 episode titles.
No, sorry, I've just got them in a Word document. Notepad copied over. Bless you. And today.
Thank you. Oh, god damn it. I'm not joining your damn website. Okay. Mass in the time of war. The disruption. Lion in the meadow. Retired janitors of Idaho.
That one has me so curious.
Interesting. Going for what it takes. Too much birthday. Whose birthday is it?
I'm wondering if that's going to be one of Kendall's kids.
Oh, very good point.
I have no basis of that other than it's been a thing of Kendall's messy divorce has been a thing throughout the whole series, and him trying to manage that whilst also being just the biggest train wreck of a businessman on the face of the earth. And his delicately trying to have a relationship with his kids at the same time is really interesting. And I reckon I kind of hope that episode will be about that, because it's an interesting other dynamic to a really cool character.
I don't quite know how to say this, but I'm guessing it's something like Shantyshire? Chantishire?
Yeah. No, Chantishire.
Chantishire, which is apparently a nickname for a part of Tuscany, Italy, where rich British people have taken over with their second homes and vacations, or for their vacations. Which I know that they've filmed a ton in Italy for this season.
It's where Chianti comes from, the wine that is best enjoyed with a human liver, as we all know.
But except that he says Chianti in the...
it should be Chianti if it's Italian.
Some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Please don't eat my liver.
I do not want to eat your liver, it's fine. Yeah, Secession, Mass in the Time of War. Yeah, I think he's missing 2 episodes, actually. Because that's only up to episode 8, and there's usually 10 in a season. Unless they've decided to do one less, which I really hope they haven't.
Yeah, that'd be sad.
Hang on. Season 3. Yeah, I don't really know. Maybe there are only 9 episodes. Stupid fucking
Yeah,
COVID.
I'm only seeing release dates for 9.
Yeah, me too. Oh well. We had a discussion about a year ago after you finished the season on whether or not we think that Kendall's going to take any responsibility for the death of the waiter in season 1 now that he's doing this takeover attempt. And I said that there may be some part of him that doesn't actually want to take over the company so much, because I think he has some kind of set level of self-awareness now where he's not sure he has that much, like he's not sure if he wants to take over from Logan anymore, but he clearly still wants to have a lot to say in the company. But I think what's interesting now is if you watch the trailer for season 3, is that there's a small bit of it where he says, he says something along the lines of, how do I go about doing this without having any of this blow back on me? I don't know. I immediately took that to mean about the legal trouble that he's in terms of the death of the waiter. But now, as I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, what if he's just talking about the actual thing that he did on national television where he threw his father under the bus? So I still don't know. I think that I think he's gained enough self-awareness in that second season that he doesn't, to me, seem like he's going to actively. He's not going to do the same thing he did in season 1 and be like, I am the one who must be taking over this company. Because I think he sees that his siblings also have a sense of what's the word?
Almost purpose.
Yeah, they're good at this. They are. Roman in particular. We didn't even talk about the shit that Roman goes through in season 2, where he goes off to do that like course. He goes kind of down to the ground level. He meets a guy that he actually really likes and actually tries to get him a job, which is this is, again, one of the many parts where you're like, oh, maybe Roman's actually not so much of a bad guy. He kind of learns about the company from the ground and actually uses that to become a better business person. But it's the fact that he gets, and I cannot remember the specifics of how this goes down, but they're going to do a business deal, and then the business deal is kind of taken over by. They basically end up in a hostage situation, but it's like the most sort of, it's like the least tense hostage situation you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah, it's I'm going to Google this so I don't get the countries wrong.
Yeah, see, this is the thing. I didn't want to say anything because that would. I don't want to start. No, don't want to do that at all.
Because I'm pretty sure it's so that he can run. He's getting money, and in exchange, Waystar Royko will run propaganda.
Yeah, I think, but I don't think they go into that meeting knowing that that's what that's meant to be about.
That's here it is. Roman attempts to secure funding from Eduard Askarov, a wealthy Azerbaijani investor, who agrees to provide his family's money if Waystar run propaganda. This meeting then stops because an anti-corruption militia storm the building.
That's
I say
right.
storm the building.
They kind of come
walk in,
and then everybody kind of gets shuffled into a ballroom, and they just sort of stay there for a long time. And the interesting thing about this whole thing is that Roman actually manages to make a deal out of the whole thing, and get the best possible. Like, he manages to really work the situation in his favor, and it's like Roman has been learning this entire season. Is actually very now in that place where he could have been at the beginning of season 1. Now he actually feels like somebody to contend with, like an actual genuinely interesting business mind.
And also, I made a mistake. So Roman meets Asgadov earlier on in an earlier episode, then goes with Edward to Turkey, where he's meant to have a pitch meeting with Edward's father, and that's where the anti-corruption militia, as I say, stormed the building in the politest way that I've ever seen.
Yeah, but it's the fact that afterwards, I also really liked about it is that they don't. It all feels sort of a bit like this should probably feel a bit more dangerous than it is, but for the people in that situation, and they play it as such, it's not good, and everybody feels very stressed about it. But like Roman manages to make a really good deal out of the whole thing, and then afterwards, after the DC thing, and all that sort of stuff, he's like, that sucked, and I hated it, and I feel terrible afterwards. It's like, that was genuine traumatic stress that I have gone through.
The others tease him,
and then they tease him for it.
Oh, were you a bit scared? Were you not feeling good? Everyone saying that. Yes, I was surrounded by men armed with rifles whose language I couldn't speak, who were threatening people around me. I was scared.
You scared, buddy?
Poor boy.
Man, but I think Roman's going to be one of the most interesting people to watch in this new season.
Yeah,
I think
he's going to be fascinating because you said earlier that Kendall's seen that his siblings aren't useless.
Yeah. I don't think he ever saw them as useless. I think he just
Yeah,
saw himself as above them, and now I
yeah,
don't think he does.
Yeah, and I think the only way that it resolves as a story is somehow with them working
Together
in some capacity,
Yeah.
greater or lesser, who knows. And I'm not even going to try and speculate how that's going to happen. The writers are too good.
Sorry,
What-
I can't stop thinking about that little bit in the trailer of Shiv him saying something incomprehensible, and Shiv just looking like, "You look insane," and it just cuts over to him going, it's like, yeah, he does. He looks insane.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man,
I'm incredibly excited for
Me too.
season 3.
I think that's it as well. I think we've gone through as much as we can go through. There are smaller things that we could have talked about, like Roman's whatever the hell Roman's sexuality is, but I think that will leave people to find out about that one for themselves.
Yeah, that. See if you can figure it out, because I'm baffled.
Nobody knows. Yeah.
It's just 3 question marks.
And it's something to do with Jerry. Who knows? Anyway, thank you for watching, people who are watching this. Lily should be back soon, and we might. I have a feeling we'll probably end up taking a break next week, just because it's just before Comic-Con. So I guess we'll probably see you in a couple of weeks. But if I happen to find somebody else to step in, or if Lily finds that she has a spare hour and a half, then maybe you will see. Who knows? We'll see. Anyway.
Finds on more qualified to speak about this than me, who has...
You did great. It was lovely having you here.
There's one thing I'm great at, is talking bollocks.
It was good. I think my hope is that people who were interested will go and check this out. It's an HBO show, so if you're in the US, obviously it'll be on HBO Max. I think it's on Now TV over here, I believe. It's a Sky thing, because fucking HBO.
Do what I did. Get the free trial, watch it all in 4 days, don't pay a thing.
Now TV is very interesting in that you'll sign up with a free trial, and then when you try to leave, they'll be like, "Oh, no, wait, we'll give it to you for like £2 a month," and it's like, "Will you now?"
For how long?
It's a bit like that. Anyway, and that's how I end the show.
And on that eloquent note,
Godspeed, everybody.
goodbye.